Welcome to Offscreen. This week we're reading The Magnificent Seven by Nic Pizzolatto, with current revisions by John Lee Hancock. 7 gunmen in the Old West gradually come together to help a poor village against savage thieves. So, as I'm sure everyone knows, The Magnificent Seven is a remake of a 1960 movie called The Magnificent Seven, which itself was a remake of Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai.
Right. I remember watching The Seven Samurai years ago, and I was half asleep because it's like super duper long.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't seen The Magnificent Seven, the original.
Right, I haven't. I've seen The Seven Samurai, but not The Magnificent Seven, the Steve McQueen, Yul Brenner, Charles Bronson version, directed by John Sturges.
Yeah.
Written by William Roberts.
Do you at least know, because I don't really, how closely this is adapted from
I don't
it?
remember.
I always feel conflicted anytime they're remaking a movie. I feel like if it's too much the same, then it's like, what's the point? But if it's different, if it's like very different, then it's like, why didn't you just make another movie?
Sure.
So, I guess I don't know where to stand on that.
At least they waited like 56 years between...
I suppose. Westerns seems like are kind of making a comeback.
Hopefully. I feel like it's a good genre.
And I feel like even though, Hell or High Water was not a Western, but it definitely was like spiritually a Western in my mind.
Yeah.
And then you've got like Bone Tomahawk recently. I just watched True Grit not long ago, which was not quite as recent, but still. Interesting. I'm not really sure what that speaks to, why these are coming back.
You could even say like No Country for Old Men has Western elements.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's also plenty that we haven't mentioned, but
sure. Anyway.
Like A Million Ways to Die in the West, a real textbook example of
the Seth MacFarlane comedy that looked so bad.
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
That trailer looked just the worst.
So Nic Pizzolatto.
I assume is how you say that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not good at pronouncing words, so.
Good that we have a podcast.
Yeah. He obviously is known for True Detective, which he created and wrote all of, both seasons 1 and 2, I believe. And I'm in the majority opinion that thinks season 1 is far superior to season 2.
Yeah, I quickly gave up on season 2.
Well, the bummer for me, for season 2 is that I think the subject matter is like incredibly interesting. And I love like... You
like
world.
that sort of social class divides.
Like, just all that stuff.
Yeah.
Was really interesting. It was just executed in maybe the worst possible way, which is a bummer. This doesn't really seem to have too much of his personality, the screenplay.
Yes, I don't know.
Except for some of the...
What do you think is Pizzolatto's personality? Like, more philosophical?
I think it's philosophical, but it's also more like contemplative, I guess.
Yeah, true.
Slower paced.
It did seem weird to me.
Not as heavy on action or on...
Yeah, it did seem weird to me that he would be the one to rewrite this.
Yeah.
But I guess now, so the draft that we read is Nic Pizzolatto and someone named John Lee Hancock, who's I see has done...
The Blind Side, he directed.
Oh, okay.
He wrote Snow White and the Huntsman, The Alamo, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Perfect World, whatever.
But anyway, IMDb now has a guy named Richard Wenk. I guess
He has a credit, John Lee Hancock doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, he shares it with Pizzolatto.
And anyway, Richard has done a lot more action type movies.
Yeah, 16 Blocks, Expendables, The Equalizer, which was directed by Antoine Fuqua, who directed The Magnificent Seven.
Oh, okay.
Probably his most notable movie is Training Day.
Right, okay.
And Denzel Washington is in all 3 of those, so there you go. This kind of has a weird cast to me.
Yeah.
Like, why is Chris Pratt there?
I was just going to say that. Like, we'll get into this, but the character that Chris Pratt is playing, Josh Faraday, it's kind of against type for him, I would say.
Yeah, but he is a bit of he does, like, magic tricks. He's, like, kind of a rapscallion, like...
Yeah, but Chris Pratt, I don't know, he always seems like just a lovable, happy-go-lucky guy.
Sure.
And, like, a good guy. which Faraday, the character, is not so much.
Sure, yeah.
So should I get to the
Yeah, you should
synopsis?
get to the synopsis.
Okay. All right. It's 1894, and gold has just been discovered near a small town on the California-Oregon border named Rose Creek. When miners begin to blast the surrounding mountains with dynamite, the debris contaminates the stream, which is the locals' main source of water. A farmer named Matthew confronts their boss, a man named Bogue? Is that how we're saying that? Bogue?
Bogue. Rhymes with rogue.
Yes. So, a farmer named Matthew confronts their boss, a man named Bogue. A gunfight erupts, and Matthew's wife Emma arrives just in time to see her husband killed. When the dust has settled, Emma skips town and begins recruiting any nearby gunslingers who will hear her out. Most of them are bounty hunters or criminals themselves. An Indian named Red Harvest even takes up the cause. He's an excellent archer. The team of 7 follow Emma back to Rose Creek, where they run Bogue and his men out of town in a truly magnificent battle. But now it's just a matter of time before he comes back with reinforcements. By the time he does, the 7 are prepared. They've fortified the town and even trained the locals to shoot. Rose Creek makes its final stand, and when the battle is won, it's Emma who shoots Bogue personally. On the town's behalf, she offers all of the mountain's gold as a reward to the 3 surviving members of the 7, but none of them accept. They've come to care for the town and to hate Bogue's men and all they represent. Red Harvest even stays on in Rose Creek, and the other 2 ride off into the sunset.
Cool.
Any qualms before we start? You want to nitpick about my summary?
It's not nitpicking. I'm just kidding. No, it was lovely.
Okay. I really didn't get into the characters at all. There's a lot. 7 is a lot to cover. And to be honest, they aren't super distinct. Like I said, most of them are just kind of either bounty hunters or gunslingers or whatever.
Yeah.
There are kind of 2 main ones. There's Chisholm, I guess is how you say that.
Yeah.
Denzel Washington's character.
Uh-huh.
He's kind of the more upstanding one, and he's sort of got a grudge against Bogue, the guy who's running the mine.
Who hired, like, renegade soldiers to
kill his family and take their land, basically.
Back in Kansas City years before.
Yeah, and then the second sort of important one of the 7 is Chris Pratt's character, Faraday. And he and Chisholm have sort of a history, I guess, which I wasn't clear on this. I guess they
both love the same woman.
Yeah, but it seemed like Chisholm was the one actually with her.
Chisholm was with her, but then he bounced to go do something.
Yeah.
And I think she...
It'll be interesting to see if
hooked up with Chris Pratt's character.
I wonder if that element will be retained, because there was nothing about him being black in the script, so I think
There's nothing about him not being black, though, either.
But in this time period, I feel like that would have been mentioned by someone. But also, he's much older than Chris Pratt, so it'd be weird for them to be competing for the same woman. To me, I'm gonna guess that has been removed.
I'm not sure if Denzel sees age like that.
I would be surprised if that stayed in the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting observation.
But so, should we begin with the positive?
Yeah. So I thought the screenplay unfolds in a pretty obvious way.
Yeah.
Incident, and then the introduction of the 7, like recruiting them, rounding them up.
Yep.
And then one action sequence with the bad guys, and the bad guys regroup, and then an even bigger action sequence, and then Fiend. I thought they did a good job introducing each of the characters, because, as you said, they're basically all the same type of person, but I thought they introduced them in unique ways despite that.
Yeah.
That allowed me to keep track of them, and they kind of gave them enough personality ticks to keep them distinguished.
Just
distinguishable.
Enough.
Yeah. So I like that. I liked. I thought maybe it was took a little too long to do all of that.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know how you do it faster when there's 7 people.
Yeah, I think it was pretty efficient. I don't know what more you could ask it. It wraps it all up by page 30, which is about where you want to be in the beginning of Act 2. So
okay. But then I thought it was good to pay that off, during all of the meeting and greeting with an action scene right there.
Yeah,
which was good. That was smart.
Yeah.
I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty well paced, and I liked that it's basically just a handful of really big action scenes rather than. I guess I'm saying it's well balanced between the action scenes and the dialogue heavy scenes, and pretty much the whole third act of this is an extended action sequence. But I'm curious what you think, because like we've read stuff like that. I'm thinking of Shadow Company, that Shane Black script, or was that Shane Black?
It was Shane Black, yeah.
Shadow Company was sort of like that, but I really disliked it. But here I was okay with it, and I don't know if it was just because the characters were more well drawn, and like I actually was interested in each of, and they all split up too. Kind of when the town is making its final stand, they each have their own sort of assignments and everything, which is cool. Another thing that I thought was good, I'll say two things actually, structure wise. So I always like midpoint stuff, and I thought it was good here because typically the midpoint seems like a victory. But then you kind of learn the repercussions of it are a little more complicated, and that's exactly what happened here. And it was good that they they run out of town all these miners and Bogue, but then all the townspeople are still like, well, you guys are no better. I mean, you come in here and you just kill a bunch of people, and you don't live here either. So like, why would we want you here? And a lot of the townspeople end up leaving too. And it becomes a test of loyalty and of their mettle. Of Emma especially is kind of calling everyone out at one point, and she's like, "If you're not going to fight, you can leave, but don't come back. Like, if you actually want to live here, you need to defend it."
Yeah, but she's also just making that choice for all of them.
Well, no, she let them leave. She let a bunch of them leave.
But she's saying like, "Oh, they might have been chill with the robber baron coming in and doing his thing."
I suppose.
As opposed to like all the bloodshed that inevitably ensued.
Well, there was a pretty big gunfight in the beginning, so I kind of don't think the for the most part the townspeople are not chill.
I think maybe in a different movie it could have been a more engaging dilemma.
Yeah,
because she unilaterally decided, hey, we're gonna fight back.
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna involve any of you in the process of how we're gonna fight back.
Yeah, I'm
just gonna go and recruit 7 people to avenge my husband.
Yeah.
But also they destroy like good portions of the town.
They destroy good portions?
Yeah, like
totally. Yeah, definitely.
So it's interesting, but it's not really given much weight here. It's kind of just...
Yeah, I guess. But I wanted to say some other things I thought were good about the way it was sort of structured. Although this was I think this could have been more clear. I was talking about how she offers gold from the mountain as the reward to the 7. But then I couldn't tell at some point, like one of the 7 tries to betray them and just run off with the gold. And he ends up coming back later.
Ethan Hawke's character, Goodnight Robichaux.
Yeah. I think you said that right. Yeah. But
no, I said goodnight, right?
Yeah. He comes back later and he has a change of heart. But I couldn't tell what was going on there because it seemed like they were trying to say that when it came down to it, they discovered there wasn't actually that much gold.
That it was maybe close to being tapped out.
Yeah. So then it kind of lowered the stakes a little bit, or like, well, it's good and bad, I think. The good thing is, and this was coming sort of at the end of Act 2, and this is exactly what should be happening at the end of Act 2, is you set up like a want and a need for the characters. They're doing something, they're fighting the bad guy for, like a really concrete reason, which in this case is like to save the town, but then there's like the deeper emotional reason, which is like what these guys are doing is wrong, and what Emma went through as an example with her husband dying and all that. There are personal stakes. Yeah. So the perfect thing to do is you take away the monetary reward and force people to decide whether they're doing it for the real reason, which is the emotional reason. Mm-hmm. So that was cool. I liked that. It was still, like I said, a little bit unclear. And I don't know if all of the guys really got the message about like how much they were actually going to get out of this gold wise.
Yeah.
So I liked the intention of it. It seemed good. It seemed like it was trying to do what it should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's an awful line.
Machine for killing assholes?
Yeah.
That was the part where, like, I think it was right when Bogue comes back into town. He has, like, a little sit-down with Chisholm before the fight starts. And he's like, yeah, this town has changed since the last time you got here. now it's a machine for killing assholes. And then that's like right when the fight erupts.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a little ridiculous.
It feels like so fake.
There was some language in here that I'm not sure people would say back in the day. Well, like a machine for killing assholes. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think people would say that.
Also,
that's why it falls flat.
There was a part where Emma says something about how she was the only one that had the balls to do anything about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm pretty sure, especially a lady in those times, would not have said that.
Yeah.
But going back to the gold thing and just like the motivation for all these guys to do this, that was a weaker point, I thought. Like,
but they're also all like gunslingers and outlaws. Like, this is their sort of jam.
You're saying they would just do it for its own sake? Just
I think
for
eventually they do.
Spirit of adventure.
Yeah.
Maybe so, but
like at the end when Goodnight Robocho rides back into town, he's like, I figured out how to monetize this. We're gonna turn it into a Wild West show.
Right.
Which would have been another interesting angle for it to explore, like in Unforgiven, like the mythologizing of these sorts of things.
I guess, yeah. But
ultimately, this is more action.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, like, especially, I thought Red Harvest. I had no clue why he was there, why he was doing this. Like, he's not one of these gunslinger dudes. He doesn't have that, I think, spirit of adventure and just mischievousness about him.
Yeah.
And they tried to set him up like where his tribe was killed by some white men, and so he was he needed to like find a new place to belong or something like that.
No, he did a bunch of peyote.
That's right. He said
whatever. He went on a trip, and then he said that he would meet, I think Jack Horn.
Oh,
meet a man like that. Yeah, like a man like Tapping or something like that.
Oh, because he said, he recognized one of the other 7.
Mm-hmm.
Red Harvest did, and he was like, "Oh, he's the one that they refer to as the bear."
Yeah,
right? Which reminded me, isn't that what they called? Didn't they call Leo's character that in The Revenant? I think like the Indians at one point.
Oh,
they They gave him a name like the bear.
Yeah.
Crossover.
Shoot.
Also, I kept thinking of a crossover between this and Ocean's 11 because they're structured really similarly too, where you've got like the team building. That's such a like classic. That's like one of the best parts to me of any heist movie is when they're assembling the team. And that was one of the good parts of this script too.
It's not as charismatic as it is in Ocean's 11.
No, not quite. But it also reminded me a lot of that, where there's one point where I believe it's Faraday is confronting Chisholm when he finds out that Bogue is the guy who killed his family. And Faraday is like, okay, now what reason are you really doing this? Is this like a personal thing? And that's just so much to me like the Ocean's 11 dilemma of him getting back at the casino owner.
Totally.
Because now he's with his wife, so whatever. Just very similar.
I like that line though too. Like he wanted to be sure that the past was the past. And then,
I wrote that down somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like the writing's sometimes really good and sometimes less so.
Yeah.
I think Pizzolatto's personality shines through most in the description.
Oh, really?
Where you can get more... Yeah, like lines like the townsfolk, and especially the men, are exhausted, dirty, but flush with pride in their exhaustion. Their hunger earned, their demeanor's different, more tired, less beaten. I feel like that's something that could be in a True Detective script.
I suppose. It's kind of a shame, though, because to me that a lot of that's going to be lost.
Right, and then the closing paragraph, too, is really nice.
Oh, about everyone riding into the sunset?
Yeah, but how he wrote it, which ultimately, it doesn't matter, I guess, that much, so long as they capture the gist of it.
Yeah.
And from their town, the people watch them vanish into the horizon, as the sun sets it afire in the forms of the village, and the people blur to silhouettes, too, intermingling and dissipating into the vast swirling redness of the west. Like, that's beautiful, evocative writing, I think.
Yeah. I'll tell you one line that I did like, too, though. I think this was... let me get the page number here. Page 16. Chisholm is talking to Emma, and she hasn't completely convinced him yet to come and do this for her. Mm-hmm. He was going to go track down another guy that had a bounty on his head, which that guy also ends up becoming one of the 7. But Chisholm says, I may die tomorrow, but it'll be from a bullet I don't see coming. this one I spot from a mile away, and I don't intend on riding toward it with a grin.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
He's like saying this sounds like a suicide mission. Like,
Right.
I realize that I'm in a dangerous line of work as it is, but
Yeah.
that was a good line. There's a lot of like, I think it's a very Western thing. It's like a weird dichotomy. Some of the lines are like so good because they're so simple.
Uh-huh.
Like there's one line, I think it was also Chisholm, he says, "We're all fast until we're not."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's great. That's like that homespun country kind of like wisdom.
Yeah.
But then there's also this great thing that I think the Coen brothers do a lot really well. Like if you watch Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where people, I guess it sounds funny now because people don't use a lot of these words anymore because they're like big words that sound fancy, but at the time they weren't really fancy. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like...
No, your example is a good one.
This is on page 23. I can't remember what they're talking about, though.
He's telling... Oh, it's right after Chisholm had recruited someone, and they're riding back towards the town, and the guy just says, like, well, I'm going to bounce.
And Chisholm is
like,
well, that
get
horse...
off my horse.
Yeah,
I just bought that horse.
Yeah, that horse you're riding is mine, so you can just walk home if you want to leave. And he says, "You appear ambulatory," which... he's just saying you can walk, but no one would say that now, and so there's some kind of like a charm to it when you read that. But I think I feel like a hypocrite now because I'm thinking back to the Bone Tomahawk episode, and I think I criticized it for using big words like that.
Do you think you are a hypocrite, or there's something about the two contexts that's different?
Maybe it's just a matter of this one being
not a hypocrite, but someone that contradicted himself.
That's what a hypocrite is, though. I would say, but I think it might just come down to this one being written better, the dialogue. I don't know.
Okay.
So it sold it.
How did you feel about how the action was written? Like maybe the last, I don't know, much of the last act is written with
the asterisk,
just like shots with asterisks. Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, I wanted to go over that,
and they're kind of like disconnected scenes, like it's just intercutting between these characters in different places.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, yeah, the technique that I don't know who came up with it, if it was Pizzolatto or if it was the John Lee Hancock guy or what, but there's at one point it just says every time there's an asterisk that denotes a new, like a shift in perspective to one of the other characters, which it kind of goes without saying, like the way that you're supposed to write a script anyway is each time you have a line break and there's a new line of description or action, in a perfect world that should be a new shot probably, so it kind of goes without saying. But it's interesting that he made a point of saying every time there's an asterisk, this is a new character's perspective. It helps a lot. I thought it worked well because you're jumping around between all 7 of these guys.
I think it reads really well.
Yeah,
like, the clarity of it.
Yeah, I thought it worked.
At the same time, I'm nervous how that'll play on screen. If it'll just be a chaotic mess, cutting between 6 different planes of action.
Yeah.
And also, it would have been nice, or if there was nothing jumped out to me at least, some reason for why one scene followed the next. It kind of just felt he was cutting between them at random. Like if you shuffled them up, would it matter? I don't think so.
Yeah, I guess you're sort of right. Some of them lead to others.
Some of them eventually lead to others. Yeah, because it's a narrative going in the same way, but the specifics of the cut. If you cut from, instead of cutting from Chisholm to Billy, and you cut from Chisholm to Horn, I don't think anything would be lost or gained.
Yeah, and I tell you what, there were a lot of, I thought, pretty disposable little cutaways to like the townspeople, or specifically, what is his name? Jack Horn?
Yeah.
Had like a lady in town that he took a liking to who was a widow. Her husband was also killed by that, I think, shootout in the beginning. But they keep showing her with her baby screaming and like in their house, and I just don't care about them. And they don't ever, it doesn't amount to anything either, because Jack Horn ends up...
And then he dies.
Yeah, but then he dies. So
but she's only set up, I believe, in one scene previous, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I cut back to her like multiple times.
Like it should be significant to us, but it's just a lame heartstrings pull.
Yeah, but I think that's also sort of a classic Western thing to do, which maybe that wasn't the best example of it, but there were other better ones here. They usually, it seems to me like they have like the innocent as a character. That's like capital I, the innocent, you know, is like some stander by who is like the victim of all of what's going on, and they had like a kid also who his dad was like the school teacher in the town, and the kid wants to help in the fight, and his dad keeps telling him no because it's dangerous, and they end up. I think does the kid ever actually like do anything helpful? I can't remember.
Yeah, doesn't the kid pull someone off of Vasquez?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Something like that. But anyway, there are just these few other little side characters that are just supposed to represent, like, I guess, sort of the innocents or, like, the victims of this and the regular folk.
I agree with you that it's, like, structured well and it's getting a lot of these familiar genre tropes. But I don't really find it that interesting. I don't think it's, like, I think they're hitting...
The tropes or just overall the whole thing?
The execution of the tropes.
Oh, okay.
Ultimately the screenplay. The specifics of the tropes, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, they're ticking all these boxes. The structure's nice. But it just feels kind of blasé to me, I guess.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really seem to be contributing anything new to the genre.
No, like, why, what purpose does the 12-year-old Anthony serve in the greater narrative?
Yeah,
Nothing. He's just there.
I think what purpose just there because that's the tradition, is to have a character like that, you know?
Yeah, but in a better movie, it's purposeful. It's not just there. It's there because it's part of the greater screenplay. The screenplay as a greater whole.
And I do think maybe that's something that's lost in a lot of these kind of remakes of old movies, or like when they're trying to revive a genre. I think we get so wrapped up in the nostalgia and like the romance of like what these movies used to be like and what they used to mean, that it's enough for people to just stick something in there for the sake of tradition, because these movies, they would always have a character like this. And it's like, okay, but that's like not a good enough reason to do it.
No.
Like they did it back in the day, they would do that because there was a reason in the story for it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you're onto something there.
This kind of feels like they definitely, Pizzolatto and John Lee Hancock, they definitely took all the specifics of the original Magnificent Seven, transposed them into the new screenplay.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like some of the connective tissue, like, some of the things that makes... I don't know, I haven't seen that, so I don't know if it works or not. But it feels like this is lacking things that are connecting... The tissue that connects all of these elements that have been brought up into the present.
Yeah. It's a really, really simple story.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing necessarily.
No, not at all.
But there are some extraneous parts that don't really add anything.
Well, and also, I guess this is another, maybe a bigger criticism of mine, is that it is a very simple story, but yet their like plan for the end with like the confrontation is kind of complicated and like...
Oh. I guess. I don't know.
He's sitting on a chair, and then there's like... But right behind him, but covered up, there's like a little trench that he can go into.
Right. Chisholm...
His white flag is actually like a weapon.
That was pretty absurd, I must say. Yeah, so I just want to explain that more. Chisholm like invites Bogue into town with a white flag, so he looks like he's giving up, and there are two chairs set up right on Main Street. They have a little talk. That's where he says the thing about how the town is now a machine for killing assholes, and then the fight bursts out. But yeah, that was a little bit melodramatic. And he throws the flag like a spear, sort of, and it has like an explosive. It has like a smoke bomb on it or something.
Yeah, I mean, generally the beauty of westerns is their simplicity.
Yeah.
And this feels like plotting from a different genre.
Yeah.
To me.
I thought it was enough that they had a plan, which was pretty cool, to just like blow up the mine and like lure a bunch of them in there and then blow it. Which does happen. But that would have been enough as a plan. They didn't need that whole crazy thing with the chairs. Yeah.
Just because it's a weird clash for me.
Yeah. Well, I think I've covered just about all I wanted to say.
Sure. Yeah, me too. We're on iTunes, Off-Screen Podcast. We're on Stitcher. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter at OSPodcast. Facebook.com/OSPodcast. info@OSPodcast.com.
Yes, that's our email.
Yeah. You can email us there.
If
we have a website, OSPodcast.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you have any feedback, if you have any like scripts that you think we should read, anything at all, let us know.
If you think we're idiots, let us know. That's totally fine.
Oh, please try me. I will.
Daniel will respond.
Get into a flame war.
But all in good spirits.
That hasn't happened. I was kidding.
No. But I feel like we don't really say it. But like we obviously don't like most of what we read. I feel like.
What? You were gonna use you almost said hate. That's awfully harsh.
No, I mean not this. I'm saying in general, we're recommending less than we're passing on, right?
Oh, for sure.
Of course. Even we're considering less than we're passing on. But
now,
I feel like
I don't know about that, but
well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's close because we're reading really screenplays that have achieved a lot of notoriety.
Yeah.
We're not reading like every submission. But I just want to say that like it's obviously just our opinion and our perspective. So it's not like any ill will towards anyone.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe we're wrong. Maybe we didn't. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm often wrong. Anyways.
But also I think it's interesting, like, you say like most of the things we've read, we haven't like loved it. It's pretty rare that we have one that we actually recommend. Mm-hmm. I don't think that like speaks to us being like super picky necessarily. I really think that it's overblown a little bit, like the esteem some people have for like certain screenwriters. Like, I don't know. I really think there's a lot to be said just for hard work and like work ethic and people who promote their writing enough and really try to network and reach out. Like, that's a big part of the game, and it's not just a function of being a good writer that gets you like famous and gets like, that's not the reason we're reading these people's scripts. It's just because they're great writers. It's just because these are the people that have like made a name for themselves in the industry.
Which can be because they're great writers or because they're great marketers of themselves.
Yeah, but they're
some combination of the two in most cases.
Yeah, but so they're not just like godlike people. They're not William amazing Faulkner. Artists. Yeah, some of them. But anyway, with all of that, let's get to the verdicts here. Yeah,
I'm gonna pass on the screenplay and consider the writer.
Okay.
Because I think he structured it well, which bodes well for his other projects. Obviously, True Detective Season 1 is really good in my estimation.
Yeah.
But there's just not a lot here that's interesting, I don't think. It's not a good... He created a template, which was good, but the things that he applied to it were not good, in my opinion.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you mean, and like, I think the harder thing to find is someone with a perspective and with something to say, and so it doesn't matter as much if they're able to follow the template. Like, you can teach anyone to do that. So the thing that really stands out for a writer... But
at the same time, it's harder to execute that, I think, too.
Yeah, like, I do think there is still a lot to respect in someone who can adhere to a genre and make it work and just write a tight genre script. Anyway, whatever. I'm going to consider both. I think the script and the writer. I was a little more impressed, I think, with the script than you were. Maybe because, all that action, and it still didn't overwhelm me. Like, I've hated other things that do that.
Well, that's why I'm considering the writer, because Pizzolatto or Hancock, whoever did it. There's great clarity here in something that could be really messy.
Okay.
I don't know. I had one more thing I wanted to say. Nope, forget.
Must not have been good.
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, next week we are reading a script called I Am Ryan Reynolds by Billy Golston. An inside look at the marriage, career, and mental state of 2010's sexiest man alive.